Hello my beautiful friends, it's Amanda here, and today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite makeup items. That is the Super Shock Shadow from ColourPop. If you can't tell from this ridiculous display behind me, I love the ColourPop Super Shock Shadows. What you're seeing in here isn't even all of them because I have already outgrown this organizer. I've talked about this in many videos. I love the formula. I love the bright colors. They just really inspire me. I think that the single shade format helps me to feel more comfortable with colorful shades. I love the neutrals too. I love the unique, bouncy, almost creamy formula. I find that they look beautifully intense on my eye, yet I still think they're easy to work with. Because the Super Shocks are such a different kind of eyeshadow, there are some unique struggles and strategies that really come along with these. I've been thinking about doing this video for a while. I'm finally sitting down to do it. This is Super Shock 101. I'm going to tell you the basics, how to store them, how to repair them when they break, how to revive them if they start to get dried out. I'll also tell you my favorite way to apply them. I should have done a demo on my eyes. I'm even wearing Super Shocks on my eye today. I've done quite a few looks with Super Shocks in the past. I've also done some shade favorites videos, so I'm gonna link a bunch of videos in the description box. If you want to see even more about Super Shock shadows, go ahead and check those out, but this is going to be a great starting point for you. Super Shock shadows retail for $5. They have just over 2 grams of product inside, and they come in these little screw-on pots. The little screw top lid is a very important component of these. That brings me to my first point. The way to store these is to leave them in the pot. Please do not depot your Super Shocks, because these are a very silky, creamy formula. They will dry out. They will dry out if you depot them. Do not put these in a magnetic palette. Please, I beg you, do not depot your Super Shocks. I know people have done it. You might hear people say like, oh, mine are fine. No, don't do it. I like to store mine in an acrylic organizer. I used to store them flat in the drawers like this, but I just needed more space, so I started standing them up like you see this way. I still don't have an issue. I've seen some people put a little label on the top so when they're stacked they can see the names. I don't really have too much trouble finding the shades that I'm looking for because I do separate them by color in the drawers, so I know which drawer to go to, and then I just sort of flip through them to find the shade that I want. And it's kind of fun for me to not always see the shades, because since they're separated by color, I'll pull a drawer open and I'll just kind of reach in and grab one and see what I get and just use it. I've also seen some people put a magnet on the back and then store them on like a magnetic board so they can see all the shades. I'll find a picture of that and put it up here, and I will link you to whoever did this so that you can check out that storage method. I just find the drawers to be the easiest way for me. Plus I think it looks cute on my vanity like that. So we've talked about storage, leave them in the pots. That's the main takeaway. Next, we're gonna talk about reviving a Super Shock that has gotten dried out. This does happen. I keep my lids on really tightly, but just over time, they will start to dry out. Do not despair. You can revive them, and I'm gonna show you how I do it. Once my Super Shocks start to get around a year, 2 years old, they inevitably dry out. It's no fault of mine or yours. If it happens to you, it's just a fact of life. It's gonna happen. And I'm gonna show you how I revive mine. In my experience, the matte shades dry out a little bit more quickly than the more metallic shades. So here's one that's gotten a little dried out for me. This is Crossing Lines. I think this was from the fall edit last year. And it's a matte, so it really has dried out quite a bit. I'm gonna show you, like, I'm really digging my finger in here. And we're just not, I mean, a little bit came off, but not very much. Not much happening there. What I do is take a beauty oil, Please use a cosmetic grade oil. Don't go and get vegetable oil out of your kitchen. Please use a cosmetic grade oil whenever you're applying oils to your face. This is the essential oil from the MAC Prep and Prime line. It's one of my favorites. I do have a lot of favorite oils. I am gonna squeeze it out so that there is nothing in the dropper. You see that? It's emptied out. I'm gonna take whatever's left on here, like the teensy tiniest bit. That was just what was clinging to the dropper. I'm gonna tap that with my finger, and then I'm gonna tap off the majority of it so that there's barely any oil on my finger. And then I'm gonna go back into that Super Shock shadow and work that oil in. I don't know, can you tell the difference compared to this finger from the dry Super Shock? And you can kind of see where I swatched it at first. See what I mean? Oh yeah. You don't want to get a bunch of oil sitting in here. I just don't think that that's a good thing. I don't want a bunch of moisture sitting in my makeup. If you can just work in the tiniest bit of oil onto the surface of this product, it's really gonna bring it back to life. This method works even better on the shimmer, metallics, ultra glitters, but I wanted to show you on a matte because these are the hardest ones to bring back to life. I'm gonna go through that process again really quickly on this shade. This one's called Head Rush. This is a darker shade, so I think it will be a little bit easier to see. So here's the same process repeated again. I'm gonna speed it up this time. So that's how you revive a dried up Super Shock shadow. The main takeaway points here are make sure you use a cosmetic grade oil and just use a little teeny tiny bit of oil. Don't drop directly into the Super Shock. Trust me, you're gonna use too much and you're gonna ruin your shadow. Just use a teeny tiny bit. That's all it takes. Teeny tiny bit. Now let's talk about the inevitable broken Super Shock shadow, whether it gets broken in shipping or you drop it at home. It happens. It happens to the best of us. I've ordered hundreds of Super Shock shadows, and I think probably 5 or 6 of them have arrived cracked or shattered. They are super duper easy to fix. So I'm gonna show you how I do that now. It's inevitable. Some of my Super Shock products arrive broken. This is the shade Cusp. I got this in the mail a couple weeks ago, and it was cracked just due to the nature of this formula. It is quite soft and it cracks easily, but don't worry, it's very easy to fix. All you really need is a couple of paper towels and a makeup wipe, and you're good to go. The first thing I do is set a paper towel out to catch any of the shadow that might fall out so that it's easy to clean up after. And then I just really carefully open the lid. This one actually wasn't too bad, not too much product in the lid. So I'll just try to tap some of that out. So the first thing I'll do is try to get as much product out of the lid and back into the pot as I can. And then I just clean off the lid with a makeup wipe. Good as new. As long as this is a brand new Super Shock and it's not dried out, it should be soft enough that you can just press the product back into place. This formula is very malleable, so I just work with my finger and push all of the product back down into the pan. Then I just make sure that I clean my finger off on a makeup wipe so that I'm not transferring Super Shock shadow all over everything in my life. And if you find yourself missing the little print that comes in the Super Shock, you can always take your paper towel and just push down on top. Just use a dry paper towel for this step. And then you even have your little print back. That looks like a mermaid made into a Super Shock, and I love it. Just make sure you secure the lid and good as new. This repair method might seem a little bit basic, but I really just felt like I needed to include it in this video, so I hope it was helpful to you. If you have a cracked or broken shadow that is older and is too dried out for this method, it may be time to just let it go. You could try to revive it with a little teeny tiny bit of beauty oil, but I've found in general that most of my shadows that are cracked, whether I break them or they arrive broken, can easily be revived with no product other than a paper towel. The very last thing I want to talk about in this video is application. So many people ask me how to apply a Super Shock shadow. Number one is I really love to apply them with my fingers in general. I find that I can use most of the shadows and achieve most of the eye looks just by finger application. However, there are times that I find I want to do a bit of blending, particularly with the matte shades when I'm putting those into the crease. So I'm just going to quickly demonstrate on the back of my hand how I blend out a Super Shock shadow using this shade called Head Rush. This is a matte shade. I place the shadow with my finger, so I'll just kind of dab a little bit of that onto the lid. And then once I've placed the shadow where I want it, I take a synthetic blending brush. This is the blending brush from ColourPop. This is one of my favorite brushes. I think I've purchased like 5 or 6 of these. I love this for applying any eyeshadow, but particularly for blending my Super Shocks. The synthetic bristles really are the key here. Natural hair bristles are not gonna do the trick quite as well blending out the Super Shock formula. Go for something synthetic. The Real Techniques brushes are also really great for this, but I am gonna be using a ColourPop brush. So once my shadow has been placed, I will just really gently blend out the edges using a little bit of a circular motion to give a more diffused look. But you can see that blending it with the synthetic brush has really softened the edges of that swatch. So that's exactly what I do on my eyes. That's it for Super Shock 101. I really hope that these tips and tricks were helpful to you. I hope that I've answered your questions. As I mentioned previously, I have quite a few other videos on Super Shock shadows, particularly my favorite shades. I'll also link some of the tutorials that I've done. So please check those out next and let me know, do we need a second Super Shock shadow class? Do you have any other questions? Do you have any tips and tricks? Please share all of that in the comments so that we can know what you think and start a good discussion down there. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye. This is very, very important. They're also a musical instrument. What is this one long hair doing? What are you doing? Why are you so much longer? Go. Too good for your home? Who doesn't love a Happy Gilmore reference? I am feeling the most like warm fall tones right now. I feel like the spirit of a pumpkin spice latte is living in me. I don't even like pumpkin spice lattes. Yeah, I said it. Just use a little teeny tiny bit of oil. What are you even talking about? I feel like the old woman of ColourPop. You've lost it. You finally lost it. Okay. Caffeine. Whew. It's fine. Super Shock shadows. Let's just get it out of the way because I say it every time. Super Shock. Super Shock shadows. Oh. I almost wore like really orange eyeshadow, but I thought that would just be too much. What do you think? Too much or not enough? Okay, I knew that I was weird, but even I think I'm weird. Did that make sense? No, it didn't. Cheers. Whenever I post these pictures of Super Shock shadows with the lids off, people inevitably comment like, oh my gosh, put the lids on, they're gonna dry out. It takes me like 4 minutes to take an Instagram photo. I promise they're fine. Like they're not drying out from that.